Welcome to this edition of Ask Property Radar. Every once in a while, we get support questions that happen more than once a month, and we're like, hey, why not make a video and be able to share it later on? So this week we've got accessory dwelling units. Well, what is an ADU? It's simply a secondary structure on a property. It's that simple. An accessory. Why would you want to do this? Well, with so many people working from home these days, you can have an office or a workshop, a she shed. That's always very difficult for me to say. She shed, guest homes, a little secondary structure out back for the in-laws, or extra income. Seniors living on inside a smaller unit because they don't need a large primary home anymore, but they don't want to move because they have a low basis in their property maybe, and they want to rent out the front for income so they can retire and travel, or a real estate investor looking to create extra income off a property that they already own. So lots of different reasons why you might consider an ADU. First of all, please don't spray and pray. I would hate to think you buy a property assuming you can do this and turns out that you can't. You really have to do your homework at the local building department, depending on if you're an incorporated city or an independent city. Go to the building department and ask for them for information around accessory dwelling units. Hopefully they'll have an ordinance that spells this out very clearly. Here in California, we've been talking about this for years, so it's a little easier, but we can't assume, especially if you're in a state where this is a little bit newer. So what does an accessory dwelling unit look like? It can take a lot of different forms. It could go inside a garage called a junior accessory dwelling unit. It could be a detached structure, whether it be a garage that you convert to an ADU, or maybe there's an unpermitted space that was sort of glopped on somewhere on the property. Um, Illegally or not, you might be able to get that converted to a permitted space. It can be an interior project, whether it be in an attic or in a basement. You could have it attached, shared wall, or above the garage. Lots of different ways to slice and dice. Now, this is a stick-built project that happens to be from Dossier Capital. They let me use their picture of this. This is a converted garage that was a detached garage in the back of a project that they converted around 400 to 500 square feet, turned it into a livable unit. They did a really nice job. In the back, but it doesn't have to be a converted space. You can build them in the back. They could be, there's plenty of companies that this has become a very popular conversation. So you've got wall panels that you can bring on site, modulars, so projects that are being built off site and brought in, or even 3D printed companies are becoming a little bit more popular as technology gets a little bit better. I would expect to see these in the next few years become more popular, but they fall under stick built. And why is that important? Well, financing is the name of the game. When you get more creative and you look at manufactured housing, why it may be allowed in your city or county, some financing companies do not like it when you mix a stick-built project with a manufactured project, which is really too bad because manufactured housing is not the wobbly boxes that they once were. These are not the 1970s mobile homes that we once we think about when you say mobile home. Mobile homes have come a long way. If you talk to a manufactured housing provider and you say mobile home, you'll probably get side-eyed. This is actually a project by Clayton Homes, which is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Yeah, maybe you didn't know that Berkshire Hathaway owns a manufactured housing company. So these are built indoors. It's more green, more sustainable. More and more robotics are getting into the mix. So just because it's manufactured doesn't mean it's sub quality. I just want that point that out. You've also got some cities that are so interested in affordable housing, they are looking at things like tiny homes in their ordinances. What's interesting about tiny homes, this does not fall under the real estate category, it's personal property. So lots of different ways to slice and dice the ADUs conversation. You just really have to get down to the local level. I have something I created called the method. No matter where you go, even if it's allowed by right, you really have to ask a few different questions because there's different ways, even though it may be allowed, there may be some nuance you might not understand until you start asking around. First of all, health and safety. These have to meet your state's minimum health and safety guidelines. Here in California, they created a lot of rules around unpermitted spaces. As long as it meets health and safety, there may be a pathway for it to get permitted, but if it's you know, If you go to Amazon and type, you're going to find very cheap units that you can buy there, just to let you know. Well, it's not going to meet health and safety standards, most likely. That really has to do at the state level. So unfortunately, probably not going to work. Utilities, if you look above your head on a project and it's got a power line, if that falls, starts a fire, and somebody gets hurt, who's liable? Yeah, that's important to know and something that you're going to have to consider. But there's also capacity around it. You might be in an area that just can't handle any more load when it comes to utilities or sewage. So you're going to need to know those things. Don't buy thinking, assuming you can build. Can't do that. You've also got historical environmental areas. Here in California, we got the California Coastal Commission, notorious for being very difficult to work with, that can hold up your project for a very long time. Or you've got historical societies that can make building on a project that's very old or historical in nature very difficult. So just three different things. I say, huh? Ask lots of questions. Even if a building department hands you an ordinance saying, yes, you can build one, we'd love for you to build one. There's a little bit of nuance there. Make sure to pay attention. Furthermore, this is the OPU slide. Some things to think about. Don't be a cram lord. Design is really important. Quality of life for your tenants on on a property is very important. If you cram a ton of square footage and ruin the value of your property because people just don't like to live there, well, shame on you. That's your fault. Financing, we've talked about that. Depending on how you design this, financing could be a challenge. And particularly from the vantage point that you probably don't have a ton of comps. This is a newer strategy in some areas. It's not always going to be able to be financed easily. An appraiser is going to look at this, and if they can't find comps in your area, the closest thing they'll probably do is create an average value per square foot. And that's a bummer because an ADU is a lot of the most expensive rooms, like a kitchen and a bathroom crammed in a small space. So not very fun. And then you've got NIMBYs. NIMBYs are not in my backyarders. It gets very political. If they get angry that you are adding density in their lovely neighborhood and they don't like you, they are going to report you to the building department, the permitting department, talk to their council members. Uh, Unfortunately, that's just the name of the game. And if you don't see it coming, I'm, I'm warning you now. It can get political. So let's get into the data-driven side with ADUs, looking at public records, ways to identify projects that you may not have thought about. So I am going to jump over into Property Radar, and I'm going to use Riverside because I know it best. And what I'm going to do for you in our community where this video lives, I'm going to have links. And if you're on a free 3-day trial, or if you're a subscriber with Property Radar, you're going to be able to click the link, and what you see as the criteria that I built here for you, you're going to be able to click into right away. So you can start playing with the criteria without having to find it. So it's the easy button for you. I've done it. So I've zoomed in on downtown. Oddly enough, this is where I live. I live in the box somewhere. And downtown Riverside is actually also an opportunity zone. For those of you who are a little bit more advanced and following the opportunity zone, you might have some different ideas as I talk about this, because this would definitely work in an opportunity zone project because of the capital improvements that you would be doing as part of an ozone opportunity. But let me tell you what I did. I drew a box around this, and I'm specifically looking for single family projects where it's single story. I spoke to a few design firms that specialize in ADUs, and I'm like, if somebody were to call, how would you qualify the project quickly to where you knew if it was worth going out or not? And they gave me a few guidelines. So in this particular scenario, I'm looking for a single family residence that's a single story, that's up to 2,500 square feet, and where the lot size is over 7,500 square feet. And why that's important is the envelope. I want enough room to be able to do a project. If I zoom in, let's zoom in on this area over here, projects that fit the criteria. You know what? If I'm looking at the overview, I can see, yep, where the project is located, I could definitely build something in the back. Yep, backyard's great. Where if a project is like this, like dead set in the center, and I can see the garage is right there, where am I going to build it? It's probably just going to be a little bit more difficult. So you may want to go in here and say, you know what? I only want to look at 10,000 square feet. So the first example I'm giving you is strictly based on the square footage of the project. Okay, let's look at option number 2. Let's do it by zoning. So what I've done here is in downtown Riverside, I've selected R3. So something where I could build 3 units. And here's the play. I'm going to go back into property and structure. Sorry, structure. And I'm the site I want to do single family. So what this is saying is that the zoning is R3, but there's a single family property on it. So I might be able to squeeze even more units. And as I zoom in, I can see some of these might have already been converted, some of them not. And you have to be aware this zoning is different in every county. So in LA, as example, this would be LA R3. So you can just go to Google, type in the city or county that you're looking for information on zoning. And if you type in, you know, city of your city plus zoning, you could probably find out this information. But here are all the opportunities where there could be a single family on the property and I could end up getting some extra units there. Not only extra units, I might also be able to build accessory dwelling units. There are some cities where you can build extra units and then you're also able to build ADUs. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had a conversation with a real estate investor who had an existing triplex, and the city was allowing him to build 3 additional ADU units, bringing the total units on the project up to 6. What he was also doing was adding garages. There were no existing garages, and the property was large enough to where he was actually adding livable space as well as adding garages, so he could rent them out to either somebody living in an ADU or in one of the units. But what a great way to better utilize space. So anyway, so R3 single family, some upzoning opportunities, I think is a pretty unique way. Now, some of these are really odd shaped, you can see downtown, but pretty interesting to know that if the projects are laid out where, I mean, look at this one right here. It looks like the project is way in the front. Maybe you could do, you know, uh, uh, some kind of driveway all the way to the back and have little offshoots there, but just some ideas for you. So you can get a triplex out of it and then add ADUs, some very interesting opportunities. Just while I'm here, I'm just curious if I update this and add the, okay, actually quite a bit of opportunities. But I want to back up a second. So let's go back to upzoning opportunities. So option well, this is not a third option. This is a play here as well. If you're a hyper local expert and you're going to the city council meetings and you pay attention to zoning, before it ever becomes public records, what if you knew upzoning was going to take place? And there's an entire neighborhood here that might be going from an R1 to an R3, and you started marketing there first before it ever made it into public records. That is fun. So you get there first before anybody else knows it's happening because you are plugged into the local market. So that's another way to sort of layer on some information there. Okay, finally, option number 3 is very design focused, and I won't have a quick list, a little a list that I've created for you this because this is really specific to you. In downtown Riverside, as an example, yeah, I know that a lot of the older properties had an alley in the back. And what makes it so brilliant for accessory dwelling units is the quality of life that you can give both of your tenants in both the front and the back. If you've got the alley, you can have the accessory dwelling unit basically have its own entrance to where you could technically set up a fence right between the properties. And here's what that looks like here. I left the list that we talked about previously, the R3, but look at this. You've got an alley right down the middle of this block, and you can already see the detached garages already are in the back of the project. So you could convert those garages to an ADU with very little work that's already pretty much all set up. And you can rent them out separately to where they feel really separate and the quality of life for both of your tenants could be very high. So that's on top of the the single family right now being in an R3 lot. The design is really cool to quickly turn these in. Another popular thing on the design front is lots that are on corners. So let's get rid of this R3 really quick and just go to single family, and let's zoom in on an area downtown where we're looking at some of these older areas. Here we go. So, like, let's just say I wanted to add this project. Corners. Corners from a design standpoint are good because it's another alley play to where maybe you don't have an alley, but on the corner you can have one access point from the side and the other one from the other side of the street, so they can have a very private entryway and feel like separate units. So you could actually go through and create like a corners list. I could say, hey, I'm going to create a new list and I'm going to call it, this is my corners list. So I typed in corners list and I have this custom static list that I've created, or maybe I've hired an intern or a virtual assistant where I said, hey, here's my criteria. I want you to go through and any of the houses that are on a corner that meet this criteria, I want you to add that property specifically to my list. And that's it. How cool is that? And that way you can go and it's easier to design. Maybe it's less expensive. So it's a design focused way to approach ADUs that hopefully you enjoy. So I went back to the heat map view and I'm going to select property type. We talked early on about financing and the problem with appraisers not having an easy time doing the appraisal. So if I go into a map view and I turn this on, I can zoom in sort of the properties that meet my criteria, but I could see if there's any multifamily next door. And if you look at it, check that out. We do have multifamily. I happen to have single family here, but look, right across the street next door, there's more likely that they're going to have some comps, which is really, really helpful. I even got some apartments mixed in. So if you can identify projects that are closer to multifamily, you'll probably have an appraiser that might have access to a few more comps, which would be very helpful for you. This could also most likely work a little bit better in high dollar markets or downtown areas where the values are a little bit higher and you could maybe pack a little bit more value in and you could get your money out of it. um, right now, like here in California, this is really a buy and hold strategy because of the ADU, the appraisal issue and the financing issue. But I have real estate investors that, have rentals, they build a secondary unit and it's all about cash flow. But just go in with open eyes, do your homework, and hopefully you've enjoyed the few quick lists that we've put together to try to give you different ways to look at how to find these opportunities.